Good evening. Hi, Jonathan Wallace, Director General, Canada Student Financial Assistance Program at Employment and Social Development Canada. Nice to be with all of you this evening. Through the Canada Student Financial Assistance Program, the government provides interest-free loans and non-repayable grants to students to help them access post-secondary education, as well as loan repayment and forgiveness options. Through Budget 2025, the government proposes to strengthen the integrity of the program. Part 5, Division 36 of Bill C-15 proposes 2 legislative amendments to help achieve this. La première modification consisterait...
The first amendment would deny federal student financial assistance to students attending private for-profit international institutions. This measure is aimed at encouraging students to pursue post-secondary education at institutions that provide the best educational outcomes and the best value for money for both students and the Government of Canada. It also intends to address concerns regarding the lack of domestic oversight, profit-driven motives, and predatory recruitment tactics observed at some of these institutions.
It would enable the Minister of Employment and Social Development to choose whether to align with provincial decisions regarding the suspension or denial of provincial student financial assistance by also suspending or denying federal student financial assistance in certain circumstances. This could be done if the Minister is satisfied that providing this assistance could facilitate the commission of an offence, constitute a risk to the integrity of the program, or expose students or the Crown to financial risk. It could apply to classes or types of students, of educational institutions, or of programs of study. This measure would better position the government to more proactively address integrity concerns and limit financial risk to students and the Crown. Merci, ça serait un plaisir de répondre à vos questions.
Thank you. I look forward to answering your questions.
And Mr. Wallace, I must admit I never knew about this program, that it existed. Very eyebrow raising to read about it. So I'm wondering, how much will this save Canadians in terms of taxpayers? And when you refer to, sorry, one second. Was it private and for-profit institutions? Could you give us some examples of what some of those would be internationally? And my other question is, how much will this save Canadians?
Sure. No, thank you for the question. So in the last year for which data is available, the Government of Canada provided approximately $28.6 million to around 2,000 students to go to around 220 private for-profit international institutions. So with this measure, it is not expected that the government would save that amount of money. What we're trying to do is encourage students to pursue studies at educational institutions that have better outcomes for students at more reasonable cost. So the expectation is those students will still go to school, but they'll go elsewhere. So in the budget plan, we didn't actually forecast any savings. I expect there could be some marginal savings, but it's really about redirecting how funds are used towards better outcomes. In terms of your second question, there are a number of schools that would be impacted. DeVry University is one in the United States that is private for profit, as an example. It's important to note, though, that public and not-for-profit institutions won't be impacted. So, for example, Harvard University, students will still be eligible to receive funding to go there. There's also Gallaudet in the U.S., which is a university focused on deaf and hard of hearing students. Students would still be able to receive funding to go there.
So do I still have time, Madam?
Yes.
The 28 point somethings does not include the Harvards or the Oxfords.
That's correct.
Okay.
It's only the private for-profit schools outside of Canada for which we currently fund students.
Okay, thank you. Second row.
Thank you. Senator Arnold, followed by Senator Kushner.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and thank you for being here. I, like Senator Senior, had no idea this was going on. And I'm assuming, like you mentioned, the deaf and hard of hearing, totally. Can you give us some other examples of private schools where Canadians would go?
Sure. Just give me one moment. I do have a list.
Assuming it's stuff that's not available in Canada, correct? Is that true?
On that point, not necessarily. So a program does not have to not be available in Canada for a student to receive funding to go outside of the country. It's based on, there's a personal decision sort of factor as well. But many programs are available within Canada. Often there are limited spots in Canada, right? And someone may choose to go outside of the country for access. They may want another experience. They may want to study in a different language. There are many reasons for which a student may decide to go outside of Canada. Let me see. Okay. So I have a list, and it's in no particular order, so apologies.
Just a few examples.
There's National American University, Waldorf University, Grand Canyon University, MTI College, Los Angeles Film School, Charleston School of Law, Atlantis University, Columbia Southern University, St. Michael's College of Allied Health. I can go on.
No, that's
Yeah.
fine. I was just simply curious about it.
If I could, Mr. Wallace, as well, and this is sort of a general question first. The percentage of repayment success, what is it with Canadian student loans, Canada student loans?
Yeah, so in the last, I'd say 20 years, we've made great strides in reducing the default rate. That's how
Yes.
we measure repayment success. I think it was in the maybe 30% range in the early 2000s. For the last year for which data is available, it's at 8%.
Is what?
8%.
8%.
Yeah.
That's an incredible.
Yes, yeah, it's gone
turnaround.
down steadily since the early 2000s, and now it's sort of plateaued.
The initiative of making sure that a student had to make $30,000 a year before repayment, that came in when?
So you're referring, I think, to the Repayment Assistance Plan?
Yes.
Yeah, so that was first introduced in 2009, and
Yeah.
the government has made enhancements to it a couple of times, most recently in 2022.
And is that exercised by many of the student loan recipients?
Yeah, in the last year for which data is available, I believe it was 286,000 students leveraged that program. Just for perspective, there's about 1.5 million students in repayment
Okay,
right now.
yeah.
Yeah.
Is there a significant cost in administering a provision like that?
Yeah, so there is a cost in administering it, but the cost is not as high as you may think. A part of that is because the government has now eliminated the accrual of interest. So the way the repayment assistance plan works is for a typical student who may need it early on in repayment, right out of completing or leaving school. For the first 10 years, they must reapply every 6 months. And if they're still in need, we do what's known as payment deferral. So the government isn't actually paying down the loan. It's deferring payment. Sorry, the first 5 years, my apologies. And then if they're still in need after that first 5 years, then the government will gradually start paying down the principal. So the real costs to government in administering that benefit are for those who have persistent need and persistent low income. Generally speaking, most students use the repayment assistance plan for a short amount of time early in repayment when they're sort of getting their job prospects aligned, and so generally there aren't a lot of costs associated with it.
Okay. Thanks very much. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. And we're into second round now. We're going to go for 4 minutes. Senator Osler, followed by Senator McFedrin.
Thanks, Madam Chair. And my question is for Mr. Wallace. Right now, Canada has a skilled labor workforce shortage, particularly in healthcare, skilled trades, engineering, and in the education sector. And so I wonder if increasingly students may be attending some of the international private institutions because they offer some specialized and in-demand training in those sectors. Do you have sector-specific data to support limiting financial assistance primarily to students attending public and not-for-profit institutions? And could some of these changes potentially exacerbate Canada's labor shortage?
Yeah, no, thank you for the question. It's a big question, certainly. We do know there are labor and skill shortages in a variety of areas. At the same time, Canada's post-secondary education system is quite robust, and there are a lot of programs that are offered within Canada in order to fill those gaps. With respect to the international private for-profit schools, there are students in a range of programs internationally. The one area that comes to mind that may relate to your question is in the healthcare space. We do know that there are a number of students who train to become healthcare professionals internationally, such as those studying medicine in the Caribbean in particular. There are a number of private for-profit medical schools in the Caribbean. We've looked at that. Tuition is incredibly high. I think St. George University, I think tuition for medical school is around $76,000 US, which is astronomical. I believe U of T, University of Toronto, is 30,000 Canadian by comparison. And so the tuition is a lot higher. The Canada Student Financial Assistance Program has maximums. It only provides a certain amount per year. For a student who is non-disabled and has no children, the max is around $14,000, $15,000. So not even close to covering the amount required to go to that particular school. In addition, we know that once students, if they graduate from that program, they don't have preferential access to Canadian residency spots. And so they're treated like other international medical graduates, and we know that the rate at which those graduates are able to access residency spots in Canada is low, and I'm sure you know all about that.
And Mr. Wallace, I wasn't thinking about the physicians. I was thinking more along healthcare workers like some of the technologists that run CT scanners and MRI scanners, because there is a shortage in Canada of those type of healthcare workers. So I think I'm hearing for those international private for-profit institutions, you've got a list, but not necessarily data on what types of programs they offer. Are they offering programs in sectors where we know we have shortages?
Yeah, so it gets very, so many schools offer many programs, right? Mm-hmm. And so it can get very complicated quickly. And we do have some of that data, absolutely, for the students whom we fund. In terms of some of the programs that you gave examples of, we do know, there are spots in Canada that are available. And so we're trying to sort of provide an incentive for students to study where they will have better educational outcomes and better job prospects, but also at a lower cost.
Thank you. Senator McFedrin, followed by Senator Hay, please.
Thank you. This is question. I have a lot of questions actually related to this division, but I'm struggling with Division 36, Canada Student Loans Act. So I've got a couple of preliminary questions that then build to what is the core of my concern. I'm looking, first of all, am I correct in concluding that C-15 obliges the minister to deny financial assistance to qualifying students, all qualifying students studying outside Canada at designated educational institutions that are privately owned, run for profit, and offer post-secondary level courses, which we've just been discussing. Who determines who's on that list?
Yeah, thank you for the question. So you're correct. That is the proposal. There is I will note later on in the proposed legislation, there is a transitional provision for existing students, but I can speak to that later if there's interest. And so essentially, the Canada Student Financial Assistance Program would make that determination. What we've done is we look at various sources of information. For example, the United States has a good repository that allows us to determine whether an institution is private and for profit.
Mr. Wallace, forgive me, but I'm just going to try to hone in on my question, and that is, who gives that list to the minister? Where within the federal system does the list of questionable institutions with questionable funding, who gives that, or what department or what agency gives that list?
Yeah, it's Employment and Social Development Canada, and the Canada Student Financial Assistance Program is part of that department.
Okay. I may be running out of time, but what I'm trying to understand better here is the target group. And it strikes me that it's foreign international students.
No.
Okay.
No. Just to clarify, the program is only available to Canadians and permanent residents. It's not for students who are not citizens or permanent residents. It's also available, to protected persons under the Immigration and Refugee Protection Act.
If I had more time, I'd go to 6.5 and ask specific questions about whether facilitating actually could lead to suppression of freedom of expression under the Charter. But I don't have time.
Would you like Mr. Wallace to answer that question in writing?
It's in 6.5 that I'm looking at, and it's sub A, facilitate the commission by the qualifying students designated in educational institution of an offense under this act or any other act. So facilitate.
Yeah, so this provision is...
We don't have time for an answer, I'm
sorry.
afraid.
So written.
In writing would be appreciated, Mr. Wallace.
Thank you, Madam Chair. For Mr. Wallace, what's the history of this policy? Why do we do this? How long have we done this? And would there be impact in stopping this program on students with sports scholarships out of the country?
Right. No, thanks for the question. So the Canada Student Financial Assistance Program, formerly Canada Student Loans Program, has been around since 1964. The decision on whether to provide funding is based on an assessment of financial need. Students have long been able to go overseas or outside the country to access post-secondary education and benefit from student financial assistance if they have financial need. So that's been around for quite some time. With respect to your question about sports scholarships, it's separate. So if a student is entitled to a sports scholarship to study outside the country, any changes to this program would not impact that. If that student was receiving a scholarship and was also previously eligible for student financial assistance, that portion going forward, a student would no longer be eligible for. That would be the one nuance, but it wouldn't impact their scholarship at all.
So if a student from Saskatchewan gets a hockey scholarship at a school in North Dakota, they will still be able to access funding through this program? They won't.
They'll still be able to access the scholarship.
The scholarship, but not additional, they won't be able to apply for additional funding?
That's correct. Yeah, that's
And they
correct.
can now?
They can apply,
Right.
but generally those scholarships are fairly,
Comprehensive.
Yeah.
pardon me? Yeah, generous, exactly. And so what would happen is it would most likely render them ineligible for funding through this program because their resources would be assessed as being
Yeah.
too high.
Yeah,
Thank you.
okay, thank you.
Senator Senior, followed by Senator Bury.
Yeah, so I want to ask a similar question to Senator Mowgli in terms of what got us here. You mentioned there's a lack of domestic oversight, Mr. Wallace, and so I'm wanting to understand what got us here, that this change is being made. And for Ms. Thorne, and is it also open to graduate students? So that's an additional question. And then, Ms. Thorne, I was curious about how you assess the need of a province or territory when I think of, let's say, Nunavut and the expense of food, for example. How do you assess the need? Because it certainly can't be one size fits all.
Sure, so I can begin. So the Canada Student Financial Assistance Program supports not just students studying at the undergraduate level, the graduate level as well, and also at college diploma level. So this change would impact students studying internationally at any level. To be clear, what got us here? We've been doing a lot of analysis on the program in recent years. In part, there was a commitment in Budget 2024 to review the designated institution status of private educational institutions. And so as part of that work, we looked at who we were funding and what for, and we did observe concerns with international, private for-profit international institutions. In particular, there are some recruitment practices that have been shown to be sort of predatory in nature. We do have concerns about the costs, which I've already mentioned. We do have concerns about the outcomes of students attending some of these schools. I did talk about the lack of domestic oversight. And so I think taken together, it was decided that in order to reduce the risk to students and then also to the Crown, that the government would no longer fund students to go to these institutions. And we do have evidence, there are studies that document these concerns that I've raised. I would note as well that the federal government provides funding to students. Provinces also provide funding. Generally, it's a 60-40 split. Ontario does not provide funding for any student to go outside of Canada, so that this is a practice that's already in place at the provincial level in Ontario.
Thank you.
Mr. Wallace, I'm going to ask you a question. So I wanted to and you have a lot of data. Thank you very much. I'm impressed. Could you share what data the federal government has on the demographics of the students expected to be affected by this measure, particularly GBA plus analysis, that kind of stuff, which is often done? Could you, who will be affected? Mm-hmm.
Yeah, no, that's a good question. I may have to follow up to give you precise data on that, because I can get it for you. I can say that with respect to the program as a whole, around 60% of our clients are women. And so it stands to reason that there'd be a similar proportion of students impacted by this measure. In addition, around 11% of our students have a disability. And so it stands to reason that a similar proportion could apply here. But if you're interested, I can provide
More
that information.
demographics, ethnicity, race, that sort of thing to see. And you did you wouldn't have that, okay, is what
No.
you're saying to me.
No, yeah.
But you alluded to trying to give these students access to more information about schools that maybe be a better fit.
Yeah, the idea is to encourage them to pursue their studies at schools that would provide them with better educational outcomes at a more reasonable cost. And so sort of this would be sort of a deterrent to go to those types of schools, to
So
the
it's
private
basically a
for-profit.
deterrent. It's not going to be proactive to give them any information about, no, I got your answer. So I'm just